are again, guys.
Oh.
Now, we are going to discuss the very important panel about Bitcoin mining. Defend it or let it be banned. What is the future of Bitcoin mining in the EU? My colleagues previously were discussing where is it Bitcoin mining in the EU? Actually, because of high prices, there is almost nobody there. But not only. Huge regulatory pressure is also the ground why we have issues. And we're going to discuss it, what to do with this. And I have the privilege to have these distinguished panelists with me. Guys, can you introduce yourself?
So my name is Daniel Batten. I'm the founder of CH4 Capital. We specialize in Bitcoin mining on landfills using vented methane.
Hey everyone, Jayson Browder, the head of government for Mara. We're the largest publicly traded Bitcoin mining company in the world. We operate on 4 different continents, and we just signed an MOU with the Kenyan government. We manage over 1.2 gigawatts of power, and we're the second largest holder of Bitcoin of any publicly traded, with over 26,000 Bitcoin. I think it's like $1.7 billion. And so very honored to be on this panel with these distinguished guests. Thanks.
Björn?
My name is Björn Leví Gunnarsson. I'm a member of parliament in the Icelandic Alþingi for the Pirate Party.
And my name is Lyudmyla Kozlovska. I'm representative of the Open Dialogue Foundation, human rights organization. I'm privacy and Bitcoin advocate. So guys, we have right now a situation in Europe. From one side, we have discussion on the EU bubble about the need to enhance competitiveness of the EU. European regulators try to find how they can support actually tech developers, how to bring new technologies in the EU. They want to find solution what to do with energy system, how to actually stabilize it, how to find over 584 billions of euro to renew electricity system of the European Union. As Open Dialogue Foundation and Building True Change Coalition, BTC Coalition, we collected actually testimonies like Daniel and many other people in EU and US who advising what solution can be. But now we want to discuss in more detail. So this huge, serious crisis in the EU, how Bitcoin mining can facilitate with this infrastructure, this crisis in the EU?
Well, I think if you understand new energy generation and some of the challenges, particularly that renewable energy generation faces, then it's very obvious that Bitcoin mining provides a solution for simple economic reasons. And that is, if you're putting new renewable energy onto the grid, particularly solar or wind, guess what? In the middle of the day, not a lot of people use solar. And in the middle of the night, when the wind's blowing, not a lot of people use wind. And so if you have a customer who's uniquely suited to be able to use the energy when you or I do not want to use it, then that wind farm is going to be more profitable. Then that solar farm will be more profitable. And when it's more profitable, guess what it does? Well, it does the same thing that any business owner does. It pours it back into its business, which means you get more solar farms. You get more wind farms. So proliferation is a flywheel effect. And if you have a Bitcoin mining catalyst who can use energy that no one else could otherwise use, equals more profitable operations, which proliferates the renewable transition. And what that does for the government is it means the government doesn't have to get involved in trying to give subsidies at a time when governments around Europe are actually removing those subsidies from renewable power generation. So rather than do we subsidize or do we let renewables flounder, there's a third option now, which is we have this incredible thing called Bitcoin mining, and we put them in the renewable farms, location agnostic, time of day agnostic, most flexible energy consumer in the world, and that does its own thing, and the government doesn't even need to give subsidies.
Yeah. Jayson, maybe you can explain actually how your technology can bring this innovative component to the EU.
Yeah, if I can add on, and there's probably a few people more articulate than Daniel Batten to go after. But as we speak with policymakers, both in the US and abroad, from a macro perspective, particularly with the EU, with certain climate mandates or certain target goals as far as methane emissions. There's a 2050 target goal that was discussed at COP28. From a macro perspective, Bitcoin mining, the technology itself, can help to solve these challenges. So when you think of mining on landfills, for instance, or announcement that we just made yesterday that we are mining in the shale basin in the U.S. on flared gas. That's a very macro view that policymakers are starting to understand. And then from a micro perspective, particularly revitalizing communities within the EU, where maybe industry has left, you see that that happening particularly in the United States. At one of our sites in Granbury, Texas, our property taxes pay for all essential services for that community. And this is something that policymakers, I think, in the EU understand when you are able to share those stories. And then I think the last point that I'll hit, and maybe we'll talk about it later, is our heat reuse project in Finland, using 2 megawatts of energy to reheat in district heating 11,000 residents, which I think is another important a message to get to policymakers in the EU.
Yeah. Björn, can you explain actually what's happening in Iceland? I would just say that Iceland and Norway, one of the key, unfortunately, jurisdictions which said that Bitcoin mining has to be banned. First, it's actually stealing green energy. Like, what is the situation there? What is the approach? Why it's so? Were there any public consultation? What you can say about it?
Well, the situation in Iceland is quite different from many other countries energy-wise. We have a lot of energy production, and a lot of it is going like through to aluminum smelters and heavy industry, which require like 24/7 operations. So there's less leakage in the system as a whole. However, we're dealing with a deficiency in public opinion, specifically about mining. And how would be best to say it? People don't think it's feasible, or they can't see the product that comes out of putting energy into something like crypto mining. So the challenge basically is to, let's go for the benefits. The benefits are currently the energy prices in Iceland are very low. And the aluminum smelters and heavy industry are paying a really low fee. So mining is coming in basically as a competitor to raise the price for everyone's benefit, because the Icelandic National Power Company is basically running the entire show. There aren't that many other like power generating companies. So it's a really good thing to get more competitors involved. However, because of public opinion, we don't see we see more lobbying towards energy, towards the heavy industry, the aluminum smelters. They have the money to lobby for that, and they, as far as I can hear, the rumor is that just next month they'll start denying energy to the mining companies.
Why?
Again,
it's very serious.
It's a populist reaction, because public opinion is really viewing the aluminum smelters as the value creation based off of energy production in Iceland, and they can't see the value production in any like non-physical, I guess, products. So it's a conundrum, basically. We have to do a bit more explaining of how these contracts work, how these services can benefit like Icelandic energy production.
Yeah. And I know this panel will be also watched by other members of EU bubble, politicians. So, Jayson, I want immediately, as Bitcoin miner, ask you a question. There is very spread message that Bitcoin is stealing this green energy. Would you guys actually steal any green energy, or you would take in only when it's nobody takes this energy? Can you just a little bit explain this so everybody absolutely clear how it's happened?
Well, I mean, as I was discussing earlier with the panel, Bitcoin miners are going to go where there is either excess energy or stranded energy, and that does, I think, two things that the panels hit on. For instance, the stranded energy, I'll mention the MOU we signed with the Kenyan government. They have a lot of power generation. What they don't have is the infrastructure to take that power to the communities that need it. So Bitcoin miners, our data centers are modular. They also don't need fiber optic cable like traditional data centers do. So we can co-locate this where the energy source is and partner with those state utilities to help monetize this asset that otherwise would be stranded. And then they can use those revenue sources to then electrify the grid for the country and these communities. On the excess energy in the UAE, we have a partnership with ADQ, which is the Sovereign Wealth Fund. We partner directly with ADWIC, which is their state-run utility. In the UAE, during summer months, they have to produce a certain amount of energy to cool residential, commercial. They also desalinate. And then during the winter months, they have excess, basically wasted. And the UAE government looked at all kinds of different technologies that they could use to help solve this challenge. They picked Bitcoin mining is the technology solution to help monetize this asset. And so we can monetize that excess asset. And also about our data centers that are unique comparatively to traditional ones. Because Bitcoin is decentralized, we're able to turn our machines off. And so we have a 250 megawatt facility. In 2 to 4 minutes, we can turn off 250 megawatts of power, give that back to the grid operator that allows them to be able to take that energy to where it's best needed. Yeah. And I think those are two great use cases to share to politicians in which we are trying to articulate in the countries that we now operate in.
Amazing. So Daniel, we have right now arguments that Bitcoin mining is a great technology for the EU. But at the same time, while there is in EU bubble officials looking for instruments to increase competitiveness of the EU, the same European Central Bank former leader who wrote this article and report about competitiveness, he was standing behind all of these attacks against Bitcoin mining. Can you just a little bit elaborate on it? How from one side he was looking for a solution with new technologies, from the other side they actually created all the grounds to destroy it.
The one thing we've got to understand is whenever you have any disruptive technology, for the first 40 years of existence of that technology, it will be attacked. It will be misunderstood. It will be maligned in the media consistently. And that has occurred for every technology since the telegraph right through to Bitcoin. So what we're seeing is nothing new. So we have an environment where you have ability through mainstream media. And one of the attack vectors, the most effective one by far, has been Bitcoin uses too much energy.
Yeah.
Right? They've tried a whole lot of other ones, but that's been the one that's settled the most. So we've got to be sophisticated in how we unpack that. And one way we can unpack it is to realize something which not many people realize. And that is that uses more energy is not a proxy for bad for the environment. And even within the environmental movement, a lot of people think environmentalists all think we should go degrowth and we should use less energy, right? Not true. The environmental movement is split. And you have roughly 25% who are degrowthers who think we should use less energy. But the other 75% are pragmatists. They have an understanding of basic supply-demand economics, And they know if you want to have a green transition, if you want to have more renewable energy on the grid, well, that's more supply. Well, how are you going to get more supply if you don't have more demand? You know, who's going to set up a bakery shop if people are eating less bread? No one. So who's going to set up more renewable energy if people are using less energy? No one. So environmentalists even recognize we need more consumption of energy to accelerate the renewable transition. So what becomes important here is not energy is bad, less energy is good. That's like saying, hey, eating more food is good, but eating less food is bad. Well, it depends. If you eat more tropical fruit and green smoothies, it's probably good. If you're eating a lot of chocolate cake, it's probably not so great. So the type of energy we're consuming is what matters, and we've been missing this nuance completely. And so what I say to people, politicians, regulators, ESG investment committees, sovereign wealth funds, family offices, you name it, who come and say, well, Bitcoin uses too much energy, I explain that that's a good thing because it helps us accelerate the renewable transition. And I say there's basically 5 qualities of energy you want that's absolutely ideal, that you must have in order to achieve a green transition and net zero emission targets. Number 1, does it use stranded energy that otherwise would have been wasted? Number 2, is it heavily predisposed to using more renewable energies? Bitcoin, yes, because it loves the cheapest source, which is generally renewable. Number 3, is it time of day agnostic? It can use energy when other people don't. Number 4, is it location agnostic? You can put it right next to a solar farm or a wind farm, such that it doesn't even need to be grid interconnected. And number 5, does it have the ability to be able to power down very fast so it helps to counterbalance the intermittency of renewable energy when the sun goes behind a cloud or the wind stops blowing? And Bitcoin ticks all 5 boxes, and it's the only technology in the world, it's the only consumer in the energy in the world that ticks all 5 boxes. That means it is the absolute wet dream for an environmentalist, because it's the only thing that allows you to be able to bring on massive quantities of renewable energy with the flexibility you need to counterbalance that variability. That has been the nuance with which the entire politicized discussion that you describe, that nuance has been completely missing. So we need to bring back that nuance, and we need to talk about not more energy is bad, less energy is good, but the type of energy matters, and Bitcoin is the ideal consumer of renewable energy.
Yeah.
If I could just,
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. If I could just add on to what Daniel said, because I think it's so important and it's so missed for people that are not in the public policy discussions and the governmental engagement. For the longest time, we've, as an industry, sort of allowed the voices, so to speak, within certain communities, whether it's the environmental community or whatever, to control the narrative. And what Daniel's done such a great job as a researcher and educator, is to push back. And what we've seen over the last 6 to 12 months is incredible. All the peer review research, whether it's Cornell University, University of Texas, I could just go on and on, is important because it gives a certain amount of credence and legitimacy when we're able to walk into Parliament or our congressional office and say, actually, that environmental group that you take everything they say as gospel, it's not actually true. Here's really what's going on, and here's the research that we can provide that gives you a clearer picture of why this is important.
Yes, exactly. And about to fight back, this is why we actually established a Freedom Technology Embassy. It's going to protect both privacy of communication and payment and Bitcoin mining. So everybody from European parliamentarians, actually parliamentarians, activists, students, academia, media, they can come in one place and actually learn to see, touch this Bitcoin mining. So one question to you, Björn. We have just 5 minutes left. We know about attacks from European Security and Market Authority. We know attacks coming from overseas of European Central Bank. We see that these attacks basically spreading for such countries like Norway and Iceland. What would be your recommendation for everybody in this room how they can explain, how they can do better, so politicians understand privilege actually to have Bitcoin mining as a facilitator of renewable energy. So we actually undermine this propaganda against new technology.
Excellent question. So just going on the topic of this panel here, defend it or ban it, I think the most important thing to understand is essentially the ignorance of politicians towards technology. We had a Minister of the Interior a couple of years ago who essentially was lobbying for banning encryption. How do you want to do that? If you want to ban mining, you're essentially trying to ban math. That just doesn't fly. And somehow bridging this gap between public opinion of what they think mining is and how the utilization of resources is in that sphere towards the essentially ignorance, the technological ignorance you were talking about, Daniel, like the 40-year period where we start to learn as a society how these things work. I mean, we have this problem with like social media now. We don't really know how this works, but we're still using it. Explaining to people like this, building this bridge between the misunderstandings, the intrinsic technological complexities that we have is a challenge, but this is the thread that we need to follow. Need to get politicians to understand that they can't fight technology, they have to work with it.
Is it useful for you, for example, to participate in this kind of event, to meet people in face, like developers, Bitcoin miners, activists who is using it? How it's useful, if you can, because it's first time you're here, right?
Sure, yeah. There were excellent panels here coming onto these topics. I myself am a computer scientist, so I know a bit about the backbone of this, but being in Parliament and seeing them try to put, actually successfully doing that, put the money laundering regulations on the blockchain technology itself.
Yes.
Where blockchain is used for a lot of other things, like just tracing or origin tracing of like different parts of meat. And those people have to fill out forms because of money laundering issues, because they're using blockchain. It's ridiculous. So being in there and they're poking people and making fun of them definitely helps.
Yeah, and just to say, Björn and his party actually supporting a lot privacy of communication, privacy of payment. Thanks to him, we actually have special report in Council of Europe, which is 46 member states, how we use freedom technology of Bitcoin for humanitarian aid, for human rights, and how regimes abuse anti-manual regulation against activists like us and financially exclude us. So, huge thank you. And guys, we have just 3 minutes left. What would be your advice for audience? What we can do more so Bitcoin mining actually not banned in EU, that has future there?
Do you want to go?
So can you say the question again?
Yeah.
What audience should do so Bitcoin mining is actually not banned in EU?
What should the audience do? I think we've got to be much more bold and less apologetic and less defensive, number one. Stop trying to describe to people why Bitcoin isn't as bad for the environment as you think, and show them, scramble their brains by showing them how it's actually the best ESG asset of the next 10 years. And the research will back you up. You were saying before there's been a lot of peer-reviewed research. You probably don't know that 10 out of the last 11 peer-reviewed journal articles in academic publication came out supporting positive environmental benefits to Bitcoin.
That's huge.
The media is now net positive reporting on Bitcoin and environmental externalities. The reason that seems different to what you might pick up on when you talk to people is the well has been poisoned for the last 5 years before that. So just because we've stopped pouring poison into the well doesn't mean there's not a whole lot of people who've drunk from that poison well and have soaked in that misinformation. So be bold, familiarize yourself, know that it's backed up by peer-reviewed research, know that it's backed up by what the people who've actually studied Bitcoin mining will say as well. familiarize yourself with the resources and just practice talking to people in your network, whether they're people in ESG committees, whether they're just basically liberals standing at the sidelines saying, well, I like it as an asset, but I'm not sure it's good for the environment. Just get familiar with challenging their perspectives, but do it from the position of empathy. Don't make them wrong. I was almost one of those liberals who was standing at the sidelines saying it was bad for the environment. I almost sold my Bitcoin, and it was only due to a chance discussion with someone who challenged my viewpoints that I changed my mind. So stay humble. Realize it's easy to be misinformed, particularly in this environment. But the more you can do to stay in empathy, we've got some hope. So keep on evangelizing the message that Bitcoin is a good ESG asset.
Final word?
But I just, absolutely. The 45 seconds I have left. Just reemphasize something that Daniel said, which is engage. I know in this community, it was founded sort of cypherpunk, but there's a saying that I like to say, which is, I'm sure some of you have heard of it. You might not care about politics, but politics cares about you.
Exactly.
That's the case here. And so what I would recommend is engage with your public officials because it's important. And if you can see in the U.S., this will be the last presidential election in the United States of America where the candidates are not pro-digital assets. And it's because Americans have engaged with their policymakers and said, this is important to me. And so I recommend that you all do that here in the EU.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So Europe, say, this is important to me. Bitcoin is important to me. Okay? Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Very nice.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Magazine live desk. We are here with Julian Liniger, CEO of Relay. Julian, in the last two panels, we talked about the importance of engagement, or not we, the people on the panels talked about the importance of engagement, engaging with people. I know Relay is looking to eventually reach hundreds of millions of people across Europe. How are you reaching those people as a company?
Yeah, we find it easier to reach the Bitcoin bubble where we are here. Like, it's kind of an echo chamber on these conferences and like online and social media, etc. But we find it really hard to get out there, and I think a lot of other Bitcoin-only companies feel the same. Like, I don't think we have the secret sauce yet. What we find, what works well to reach like newcomer, beginner audiences is to go through influencers, like even lifestyle influencers, sports stars. Sponsoring. We're now sponsoring a sports club, for example, where like normie people see the Bitcoin sign all the time, or even finance, like general finance influencers. I just feel like we, as a Bitcoin ecosystem, all the companies, we need to find a way to reach not only the Bitcoin bubble, but really the normies out there, which is still in Europe, 90% of the people that are not into Bitcoin yet.
Right. You mentioned it. I think in Switzerland, maybe that number is a little higher. Maybe you said between 15 and 20, but that's it, right? So we have a lot of people out there to reach. I mean, what's the time frame? What's the time frame to reach those other 90% of those people, you think?
Oh, I think it could be 1 or 2 decades still.
Okay.
I mean, if you compare it to the internet, I mean, .com bubble was 20 years in. And then we still definitely were not at 50%. We're still, end of the 90s, it was probably the same as it is now with Bitcoin, like 10 to 20%. And it still took 10 to 20 years until really like the majority used the internet and people got mobile phones, etc. So as optimistic as I am long term, I think it's still going to take some time.
We got some work to do. We're going to keep engaging. And ladies and gentlemen, we are about to let you engage with Jack Mallers and Dylan Leclerc, who are coming to the main stage here at Bitcoin Amsterdam 2024. I'm kicking it over to the main stage. Stick with us. We'll be after for a full day recap right after this.
Is your company ready for the next evolution in financial strategy? Bitcoin for Corporations is your partner in securing the future of your business. With exclusive membership benefits, our comprehensive masterclass, and a network of trusted service providers, we provide the insights and resources to help you incorporate Bitcoin into your financial strategy, ensuring stability and long-term value. Strengthen your business. Innovate with confidence. Bitcoin for Corporations, protecting your treasury and positioning you for the future.